I never imagined the biggest betrayal of my life would come from the two people who smiled at me every Sunday over dinner. My name is Emma. I'm 33 years old, and until last year, I believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. My husband, Daniel, and I had been together for 8 years. We weren't rich, but we had built a comfortable life together. We owned a small house outside Seattle. Both worked full-time and dreamed of starting a family. There was only one problem: Daniel's mother, Linda. From the day we got engaged, Linda made it painfully clear that no woman would ever be good enough for her son. Whenever I cooked dinner, she'd quietly tell Daniel that he looked thinner than before we married. Whenever I bought something nice for our home, she'd whisper that I was wasting his money. Whenever Daniel and I disagreed, somehow Linda always knew within an hour. A tea first. I blamed coincidence. Later, I realized Daniel told her everything. Still, I tried. I bought birthday gifts, hosted Thanksgiving, visited every weekend, even when she criticized my clothes, my job, or the way I folded towels. I smiled, because I loved my husband, or at least, the man I thought he was. Everything changed 6 months ago. My grandmother passed away. She had raised me after my parents died when I was 11. She wasn't wealthy, but she'd saved every extra dollar she ever earned. When her lawyer called me, I learned she'd left me $85,000. It wasn't enough to retire, but it was enough to finally pay off our mortgage. Daniel hugged me when I told him, "We'll finally be debt-free. Our future starts now." I believed every word. The money was transferred into my personal savings account, because Grandma's will specifically named me as the sole beneficiary. Daniel never complained, or so I thought. A few weeks later, my office sent me to Chicago for a 3-day conference. Before I left, Daniel kissed me goodbye. "Don't worry about anything. I've got everything under control." Those words echoed in my mind when I landed back home. The first thing I noticed was the new luxury SUV parked in Linda's driveway. She'd spent years complaining about her old car. Now she suddenly owned an $80,000 vehicle. Daniel laughed when I mentioned it. Maybe she won the lottery. Something about his smile felt off. The next morning, I opened my banking app to transfer part of my inheritance toward the mortgage. My balance read 327.14. I blinked, closed the app, opened it again. Same number. At first, I thought it had to be a banking error. Then I saw the transaction history. Outgoing wire transfer 84,700. Recipient Linda Carter. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. There had to be some explanation. Maybe fraud, maybe identity theft, maybe. Daniel walked into the kitchen holding a cup of coffee. "You okay?" I turned my phone toward him. "What is this?" For just a split second, his face went completely white. Then he sighed. "I was going to tell you." My stomach dropped. "You were going to tell me that my inheritance disappeared." He rubbed his forehead. "Mom needed help. Needed $85,000. She deserved it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That money belonged to my grandmother. Daniel shrugged. "Family helps family." I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because my brain refused to process what was happening. "You stole from me." "No, I used our money." "Our money?" "My grandmother left it to me." He folded his arms. "Everything in a marriage belongs to both people." I pointed toward the bank statement. "Then why is the account only in my name?" He didn't answer. Instead, he said something that shattered 8 years of marriage in a single sentence. "My mother has done more for this family than your grandmother ever did." Silence. Complete silence. I picked up my keys. "I'm leaving." Daniel didn't even try to stop me. Instead, he called after me, "You'll calm down. You always do." As I drove away, my phone buzzed. A message from Linda. I knew Daniel would finally do the right thing. Maybe now you'll learn that mothers come before wives. I read it 3 times. Then I smiled, because neither of them knew something very important. The money wasn't the only thing my grandmother had left me. She had also left me every document, every letter, and one secret that was about to destroy everything Daniel and Linda thought they owned. I spent that night in a hotel, but I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the wire transfer. 84,708 years of trust had vanished with a single click. At 7 o'clock the next morning, my phone rang. It was Daniel. Emma, can we please talk? No, you're overreacting. I actually laughed. I'll call you when stealing $85,000 becomes a normal marital disagreement. He sighed dramatically. You know, Mom already spent most of it. That sentence hit me like another slap. What? The dealership wouldn't hold the SUV forever. She also paid off some credit cards. So neither of you planned on giving it back. It wasn't stealing. He sounded annoyed now, as if I were the difficult one. It was helping family. I hung up. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I drove to the office of my grandmother's attorney. Mr. Howard Bennett had handled her estate for over 20 years. When I walked into his office, he looked genuinely concerned. Emma, I wasn't expecting to see you so soon. I slid my phone across his desk. My husband transferred my inheritance to his mother. He adjusted his glasses and read the transaction history. His expression hardened. He did this without your written authorization? I never approved anything. Did you sign any power of attorney? No, he leaned back in his chair. Then, we have a very serious problem. For the first time since yesterday, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Mr. Bennett asked me one question that changed everything. How did your husband gain access to your account? I froze. Then I remembered. Almost 4 years earlier, when we'd refinanced our mortgage, I'd given Daniel temporary access to my online banking. After everything was finished, I never removed his device. He still had the login saved on his laptop. I completely forgot. Mr. Bennett nodded slowly. That explains how, but it doesn't make it legal. He opened a thick folder from Grandma's estate. There is something else you should know. He placed a sealed envelope in front of me. Across the front, in Grandma's familiar handwriting, were the words, "For mainly if someone tries to take what belongs to you." My hands started shaking. I carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. My sweet Emma, if you're reading this, someone has disappointed you in a way I always feared. Money doesn't change people. It reveals them. Don't let guilt stop you from protecting yourself. Real family never demands your sacrifice while offering none of their own. Tears rolled down my face. It felt like Grandma was sitting beside me. There was another document underneath the letter. Mr. Bennett smiled slightly. Your grandmother was very thorough. The document showed ownership records. I frowned. What am I looking at? He tapped one page. Do you remember the house you and Daniel live in? Of course. Who do you think paid the down payment? My savings. And a small gift from Grandma. He nodded. Not exactly. He turned another page. Your grandmother didn't give you a gift. She gave you a loan. What? The paperwork was intentionally delayed until after her passing. I stared at him. I don't understand. He slid the signed agreement toward me. She loaned you $120,000 for the down payment, but I never made payments because she instructed me not to collect while she was alive. I looked completely confused. Why would she do that? Mr. Bennett smiled. Because she knew people, according to Grandma's written instructions. If my marriage remained healthy for 10 years, the loan would automatically be forgiven. But if my husband ever attempted financial abuse, or if divorce proceedings began because of fraud, the loan would immediately become due. Except there was one important detail. The loan wasn't owed by me alone. Both homeowners had signed the mortgage paperwork years earlier, which meant Daniel was legally responsible too. I looked at the amount. After interest adjustments, the balance was just over 118,000. My mouth fell open. Daniel has no idea this exists, Mr. Bennett folded his hands. No, and based on your grandmother's instructions, he isn't supposed to until today. I drove home and not to reconcile, but to collect my belongings. Daniel was sitting on the couch watching television like nothing had happened. There you are. I knew you'd come around. I walked upstairs without answering. He followed me. Emma, Mom says you're being emotional. I turned around. You spoke to your mother? Of course. We don't keep secrets. The irony was almost unbearable. I see. As I packed my suitcase, he leaned against the doorway. You'll get over this. It's just money. I zipped the suitcase shut. If it's just money, when can your mother wire it back? His confidence disappeared. Well, she can't. I figured. Before leaving, I handed him a single envelope. What's this? Something Grandma left. He opened it casually. As he read the first page, the color drained from his face. What is this? A loan agreement. That's impossible. You should probably read the rest. His hands started trembling. 118,000. This has to be fake. It isn't. He looked at me with panic for the first time since I'd met him. Emma, we can work this out. I picked up my suitcase. No, you and your mother already worked something out. Now it's my turn. His phone rang. The caller ID read, Mom. He answered immediately, Daniel. Linda sounded frantic enough that I could hear her through the speaker. The dealership just called. What? They said there's a legal hold on the SUV title. Daniel looked at me. What did you do? I smiled for the first time in 2 days. I haven't done anything. Yet. I walked out the front door. Behind me, I heard Linda shouting through the phone. What do you mean the bank is asking questions? Daniel stood frozen in the hallway, surrounded by papers he had never expected to see. For the first time in his life, his mother couldn't save him. And neither of them realized that the investigation into the missing inheritance had already begun. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 12 from Daniel. 5 from Linda. I ignored every single one. Instead, I made myself a cup of coffee and stared out the hotel window. For the first time in years, I felt strangely calm. The crying was over. Now it was time to think. At exactly 9 o'clock a.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Mr. Bennett. Emma, I've already contacted the bank. My heart skipped, and they've opened a fraud investigation. I thought Daniel had access to my account. He did, but having access doesn't automatically give someone permission to transfer nearly $85,000 into a relative's personal account. So, the bank wants statements from both of you. For the first time, I realized Daniel wasn't just facing an angry wife. He was facing a paper trail. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel was having a much worse morning. I would later learn exactly what happened. The bank had frozen every account connected to the disputed transfer. His debit card declined while buying breakfast. His credit card stopped working. Even the automatic payment for his truck bounced. He immediately called me. No answer. Then he called the bank. They gave him the same response. The transaction is under investigation. Linda wasn't handling it any better. She stormed into the dealership where she'd purchased the luxury SUV. I already paid. The finance manager remained polite. Mrs. Carter, we've received notice that the funds used for this purchase may be disputed. So, until ownership of those funds is determined, we legally cannot finalize the vehicle title. Her smile disappeared. You're kidding. I'm afraid not. What if I already sold my old car? I'm sorry, but that's not something we can change. She left furious. Around noon, Daniel finally showed up at the hotel. The receptionist called my room. There's a man asking for you. I don't know anyone here. She understood immediately. He says he's your husband. I know. But I don't want to see him. 5 minutes later, she called again. He's refusing to leave. I sighed. I'll come downstairs. Daniel looked exhausted. His hair was a mess. His shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't slept either. The moment he saw me, he rushed over. Emma, please. We need to fix this. I folded my arms. I'm listening. He lowered his voice. The bank froze everything. I know. They're treating me like a criminal. I stared at him. You transferred my inheritance without asking. It wasn't like that. No. We're married. So you thought you'd surprise me by giving my grandmother's life savings to your mother? He looked away. It sounded different in my head. Then came the apology. Or at least, his version of one. I'm sorry you're upset. There it was. Not. I'm sorry I stole from you. Not. I made a terrible mistake. Just. I'm sorry you're upset. I almost laughed. You still don't understand. I do. No, Daniel. You understand consequences. Not regret. Before he could respond, another voice interrupted us. Emma. I turned around. Linda. She'd somehow found the hotel. She marched across the lobby like she owned the place. This has gone far enough. I blinked. Excuse me. You embarrass my son. I looked at Daniel. You told her where I was? He looked guilty. I didn't think she'd come. Linda stepped closer. You need to call the bank. No, you need to tell them it was a misunderstanding. No, you owe this family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I owe this family. You've lived in our son's house for years. I actually laughed. Our house. No, my son's house. Daniel stayed silent. That silence told me everything. He agreed with her. Linda pointed a finger at me. You've always been selfish. Really? Yes. You never helped this family. I took a slow breath. Let's count. I hosted every holiday. Silence. I drove you to doctor's appointments. Silence. I paid your property taxes 2 years ago. Daniel looked shocked. You never told me that. Linda quickly interrupted. That's different. No, it isn't. I looked directly at Daniel. Did your mother ever mention the $12,000 I lent her after her roof collapsed? His eyes widened. What? Linda's face turned pale. It wasn't important. It became important when you started calling me selfish. Daniel slowly turned toward his mother. You borrowed money from Emma. She avoided eye contact. It was years ago. Did you ever pay it back? Silence. For the first time, I saw doubt in Daniel's eyes. Tiny, but unmistakable. His mother's perfect image had cracked just a little. At that exact moment. My phone buzzed. It was Mr. Bennett. One sentence. Do not agree to anything. Someone else wants to speak with you. A second later, another man walked into the hotel lobby. Dark suit. Briefcase. Professional smile. He looked directly at me. Miss Carter? Yes. I'm Michael Hayes. I'm with your bank's Financial Crimes Investigation Unit. Daniel's face instantly lost all color. Linda took a nervous step backward. Mr. Hayes opened his briefcase and removed a folder. I have a few questions regarding an unauthorized wire transfer. The entire lobby fell silent. Daniel looked at his mother. His mother looked at the floor. Neither of them spoke. Mr. Hayes then looked directly at Daniel. Sir, I'll need you to explain exactly how you obtained authorization to transfer $84,700 from your wife's personal account. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time since this nightmare began, the burden of explaining was no longer on me. It was on them, and the truth was about to become far more expensive than the money they'd taken. The hotel lobby was so quiet that I could hear the air conditioner humming overhead. Daniel stared at the investigator. Linda refused to look anyone in the eye. Mr. Hayes calmly opened his folder. Mr. Carter, he said, this is a routine investigation. We simply need to establish how this transfer was authorized. Daniel forced a nervous smile. It was a misunderstanding. Mr. Hayes wrote something in his notebook. Please explain. We're married, Daniel replied. The money belonged to both of us. Mr. Hayes didn't even look up. Did your wife authorize the transfer? Daniel hesitated. Not exactly. Did she know about it before the transfer? No. Were the funds deposited into a joint account? No, they were in her personal savings account. Mr. Hayes nodded. So your answer is no. Daniel swallowed hard. Linda suddenly stepped forward. This is ridiculous. They're husband and wife. Married couples share everything. Mr. Hayes finally looked at her. Ma'am, with respect, that isn't the issue. It certainly is. No, the issue is whether the account owner knowingly approved an $84,700 wire transfer. Linda crossed her arms. My son had every right. Mr. Hayes closed the folder. I appreciate your opinion, but opinions aren't legal authorization. Daniel looked at me. Emma, tell him you were going to help Mom anyway. I shook my head. I was going to pay off our mortgage. You could have helped later. You never asked. I knew you'd say no. The words slipped out before he realized what he'd admitted. The investigator immediately looked up. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Could you repeat that? Daniel froze. I didn't mean. You just stated you believed your wife would refuse. Silence. So you completed the transfer without her knowledge. Daniel's face turned bright red. Mr. Hayes thanked us for our time. We'll continue reviewing the transaction with the bank's legal department. Before leaving, he handed me a business card. If anyone contacts you regarding repayment or asks you to withdraw your complaint, please notify me immediately. I will. Then he walked away. The moment the investigator disappeared through the front doors, Linda exploded. This is your fault. She pointed directly at me. You've destroyed this family. I laughed bitterly. I destroyed it? Yes. You made my son look like a thief. I looked at Daniel. No one made him look like one. He handled that himself. Daniel finally raised his voice. Mom! Stop! Both of us turned toward him. I said stop. It was the first time I'd ever heard him speak sharply to her. Linda looked stunned. You don't talk to me like that. I'm trying to fix this. She glared at him. If you'd handled your wife better, none of this would have happened. Those words hung in the air. Daniel looked confused. My wife? Yes. You always let her think she had equal say. I felt sick. Was this really how Linda saw marriage? Then she said something even worse. I told you years ago to put everything in your name. Daniel's eyes widened. Mom. No, let me finish. You never listen. If you transferred the house into your name, she couldn't threaten you now. I noticed Daniel's expression. He wasn't surprised. He was embarrassed. Which meant this wasn't the first time they'd discussed it. Suddenly, years of strange conversations made sense. Linda insisting the mortgage should only have Daniel's name. Linda encouraging him to protect his assets. Linda constantly asking about my salary. She hadn't been making innocent conversation. She'd been gathering information. I looked directly at Daniel. How long? He frowned. What? How long have the two of you been planning to separate our finances? We weren't planning anything. Really? Then why did your mother just admit she'd been telling you to take the house? He didn't answer, because he couldn't. I picked up my purse. I'm done. Daniel grabbed my arm. Emma, wait. I gently pulled away. Don't. He looked desperate now. I'll get the money back. How? I'll convince Mom. I smiled sadly. So now you need permission from your mother to fix your marriage? His shoulders dropped. He knew exactly what I'd meant. That afternoon, I met with a divorce attorney recommended by Mr. Bennett. Her name was Rachel Morgan. And within 10 minutes she had already reviewed the basic facts. She looked at me seriously. Emma, I need to ask you something. Okay. Has your husband ever controlled your finances before? I thought about it. Then memories started flooding back. Daniel, insisting on reviewing my credit card statements, questioning every purchase over 100, asking why I needed my own savings account, encouraging me to leave my higher-paying job because it was too stressful. At the time, I'd mistaken it for concern. Now. It looked very different. Rachel nodded as I spoke. This pattern has a name. What is it? Financial abuse. The words hit me like a punch. I had never considered myself a victim, but the more we talked, the clearer everything became. Rachel smiled gently. Emma, people think financial abuse always starts with empty bank accounts. It doesn't. It usually starts with small acts of control, and then it grows. I sat quietly, thinking about every compromise I'd made, every excuse I'd accepted, every red flag I'd ignored. As I prepared to leave her office, Rachel handed me a checklist. One more thing. What's this? A list of everything you should secure today. Passwords, credit reports, insurance, retirement accounts, digital backups. I looked at the pages. Then she added one final sentence. And change every password your husband has ever seen. That evening, I spent nearly 3 hours changing every login I owned: email, banking, retirement, cloud storage, even my streaming accounts. For the first time in years, Daniel no longer had a key to my digital life. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hello? A quiet female voice replied. Emma? Yes. My name is Sarah. I worked for Linda for almost 12 years. I frowned. I'm sorry. Who? I was her accountant. My heart skipped a beat. I heard what's happening. There was a long pause. Then she whispered something that made every hair on my arm stand up. I think your inheritance isn't the first money Linda has convinced someone else to give her. I sat upright. What do you mean? I have documents. What kind of documents? Another long silence. Finally, she answered. The kind that could ruin Linda forever. The moment I hung up the phone, I knew one thing. Sarah wasn't calling to gossip. She sounded scared. The next morning, we agreed to meet at a quiet cafe about 30 minutes outside the city. I arrived first. 10 minutes later, a woman in her late 50s walked in carrying a worn leather briefcase. She looked over her shoulder twice before sitting down. You must be Emma. I am. She placed the briefcase on the table but didn't open it. I've debated making this call for years. Why now? She looked me straight in the eyes. Because what happened to you was the last straw. Sarah had worked as Linda's accountant for nearly 12 years. She managed tax records, rental income, and personal finances. I finally quit 6 months ago. Why? Because I couldn't watch her manipulate people anymore. My stomach tightened. What people? She slowly opened the briefcase. Inside were neatly organized folders. Linda has spent years convincing relatives to loan her money. Did they get it back? Sarah shook her head. Almost never. One by one, she showed me copies of old records. A cousin who loaned Linda $15,000 after a supposed medical emergency. A retired uncle who transferred $22,000 to help save the family home. A close friend who emptied part of her retirement savings. Every story ended the same way. Promises. Excuses. Silence. Some families stopped speaking to each other forever. Others simply gave up. But this is different. Sarah said. How? She slid another document across the table. It was a text message printout. I recognized Daniel's phone number immediately. The messages were from 2 weeks before my business trip. Daniel. Mom, Emma still hasn't agreed. Linda. She doesn't have to. Daniel. She's planning to pay off the mortgage. Linda. Then move before she does. Daniel, she'll be furious. Linda, she'll forgive you. She always does. I felt sick. There it was. Proof that this wasn't an impulsive mistake. It had been planned. I asked the question I was afraid to hear. How did you get these? Sarah sighed. When I resigned, I backed up communications related to financial records. I kept them because I feared someone would eventually need them. She paused. I think that someone is you. Later that afternoon, I handed everything to Mr. Bennett and my attorney. Rachel carefully read every page, then she looked at me. This changes everything. How? It strongly suggests the transfer was planned before it happened. Mr. Bennett nodded. And it directly contradicts Daniel's claim that he believed you would approve. For the first time, I wasn't relying only on my word. I had evidence. That evening, Daniel called again. This time I answered. His voice was exhausted. Emma, can we meet one last time? Why? I've told Mom she has to return the money. I stayed silent. Finally, he admitted the truth. She said no. I wasn't surprised. And she told me to choose. Choose what? You or her? We met the next afternoon in a public park. Daniel looked older than he had just a week earlier. I didn't think it would go this far. I folded my arms. You never thought I'd fight back? He lowered his head. No, he took a deep breath. I owe you the truth. For the next 20 minutes, he admitted everything. His mother had convinced him that I was too independent. She constantly told him that if I controlled money, I'd eventually leave him. She convinced him the inheritance should stay within their family. When she suggested transferring it, I knew it was wrong. So why did you do it? He looked away. Because I spent my whole life trying to make her happy. For the first time, I believed he was telling the truth, but believing him didn't erase what he'd done. I loved you, I said quietly. I know. I trusted you more than anyone. I know. And you chose your mother. He wiped tears from his face. I did. There was nothing left to say. I stood up. I've already filed for divorce. He closed his eyes. I figured. As I walked away, he didn't try to stop me, this time. He knew he had already lost. 3 weeks later, the bank completed its investigation. The evidence was overwhelming. The transfer had been made without my knowledge or approval. Faced with the investigation, Linda's attorney contacted mine with an offer. She would return every remaining dollar from the inheritance. She would sell the luxury SUV to repay the rest. In exchange, she wanted the matter settled without a lengthy court battle. Rachel looked at me. The decision is yours. I thought about Grandma's letter. Money doesn't change people. It reveals them. I smiled. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. And for the first time since Grandma passed away, I felt like I was honoring her wishes. 6 months later, I walked into the courthouse for the last time. The divorce papers were signed. The marriage was officially over. I expected to feel heartbroken. Instead, I felt free. The settlement was straightforward. The bank recovered a significant portion of the inheritance. The proceeds from the sale of Linda's luxury SUV covered much of the remaining amount. Daniel also agreed to a structured repayment plan for the balance he remained responsible for. It wasn't about winning money. It was about restoring what had been taken. The hardest part wasn't losing my husband. It was accepting that the man I loved had never learned to stand on his own. A few weeks after the divorce, Daniel sent me one final letter. He wrote that he had moved into a small apartment. He had started counseling. For the first time in his life, he was learning how to make decisions without his mother's approval. He didn't ask me to come back. He simply apologized. A real apology. No excuses. And no blame. Just regret. I quietly placed the letter in a drawer. Some apologies deserve to be heard. They don't always deserve another chance. As for Linda, the consequences reached far beyond our family. Several relatives, after hearing what had happened, began asking questions about old loans they had never recovered. Some demanded repayment, others cut off contact completely. The reputation she had spent decades building collapsed in a matter of months. She had always believed manipulation was power. Instead, it became her downfall. One sunny afternoon, I returned to my grandmother's house. It had been empty since her passing. I sat on the porch with the letter she had written me. I read the final paragraph one more time. Your greatest inheritance isn't money, Emma. It's knowing your worth. Never let anyone convince you that love requires surrendering your dignity. I folded the letter carefully. For months, I had thought Grandma had left me 85. Oh, I was wrong. She had left me something far more valuable. The courage to walk away from people who mistook kindness for weakness. A year later, life looked very different. The mortgage was paid down with the recovered funds. I earned a promotion at work. I adopted a rescue golden retriever I named Hope. My weekends were no longer spent trying to impress someone who would never accept me. Instead, they were filled with friends, quiet mornings, and peace. Real peace. Sometimes people ask whether I regret reporting Daniel. My answer is always the same. I didn't destroy my marriage. The betrayal did. Trust is fragile. It takes years to build, only seconds to break, and once it's gone, no amount of money can buy it back. If my story teaches anything, I hope it's this. Never confuse love with blind sacrifice. The people who truly love you will never ask you to give away your security, your self-respect, or your voice to prove your loyalty. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't holding a family together. It's walking away from the one that keeps breaking you.